good morning, good evening, wherever you are. This is Jim Lowenstern. I'm the host of the eXponential Files, and this week I have a fantastic guest. Leo Pareja is the CEO of eXp Realty, and we'll go over all of Leo's many accomplishments in a moment. But welcome, Leo. We're so happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Jim. I'm excited to be here.
Great. So let's go back in time just a little bit, way back when, or maybe it was just yesterday. I don't know, but you tell me. You were the #1 agent at Keller Williams. You were only 28 years old when that happened. I'm just reading from your LinkedIn, 4,000 homes sold in 15 years. Those are pretty awesome numbers. I guess the first question is, how did you get to be the #1 Keller Williams agent in the whole world, besides just hard work?
Well, I think that's, when you see a LinkedIn bio where you get introduced to speak on a stage, that's the finished product that people see. And that old adage, it's a 10-year overnight success, fill in the blank on any of those. I think those apply to any level of accomplishment in life. So mine starts pretty much 10 years before that, like any other thing you see that looks like a finished product. I got licensed at 19. I got started while I was in college. I did well, and then I didn't. The financial crisis taught me valuable lessons on humility and systems and processes. And then through a couple year period there, I rebuilt, and eventually in 2010, I achieved the #1 team status at Keller Williams. But I was in the top like 3, 4, or 5 for a couple years there. So my focus and my kind of claim to fame was multi-transactional clients. I obsessed with systems and processes, and unlike most agents who just work more with families, one-to-one, I was very B2B focused. So I worked with financial institutions, hedge funds, developers, builders, folks that spoke a very specific financially driven language, and I built systems and processes that spoke to them very clearly in a way that resonated with them.
So you were focusing on a team and building the team, or were you a sole agent selling?
No, that I was a team. The latter 8, 9 years of my career, I sold between 400 to 600 homes a year. I peaked in 2010 with 603 homes sold with 10 people on my team. So really high per person productivity. I was mostly listing sided. So call it 80, 90% of my business were listings. So we had a very efficient way of doing things. But almost all my business was B2B institutional looking. So helping investors, sophisticated capital, buy and sell real estate.
How large a geographic area were you focused on?
Really good question. It was very large. So I was licensed in DC, Maryland, Virginia, which is not uncommon in that kind of DC metropolitan area. But I did business from Baltimore all the way down to Virginia Beach and the 7 cities. So I covered a very, very large geography.
And I'm sure the answer is yes, but explain how success breeds additional success. Like, how did you leverage, your successes to blow up even bigger?
So first in the real estate industry, if I crushed it for a particular client or customer, they would take me to other parts of the country where it was like, hey, your systems and processes did really well. Let me take you to other parts of the country, which was my first time experiencing that. But I think, life is a sequential experience on that leaves clues. So, what I learned in scaling my real estate practice when I then started a very large hard money business, correlated in that exact way, if you will, where the relationships I made throughout the REO days matured and developed into Wall Street relationships. Some of the same folks that were, middle managers at a bank during the financial crisis ended up executives at private equity and private capital for the SFR business. And I was able to leverage and grow those same relationships to buy debt from me in another world. And, when I went into tech and built Remine, I was able to convert the same MLS relationships, my friends who are agents over the 1 to 2 decade period. I know them, became more prominent agents in their own home markets, became members of the associations as board members. And so kind of that consistent track record of executing, keeping my word and following through has kind of been the best advantage I've had, where I can continue to deliver on keeping my word and building cool stuff, and one part of the journey to the next. And, my last one, raising almost $48 million in venture capital and growth equity in my last business, taught me quite a bit about financial markets and how to, companies are valued, and how income is counted and not counted, and how margin is calculated, which prepared me and gave me the ability to be able to do this job.
Was that Remine that you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess it was Washington Capital Partners came first.
Mm-hmm.
And then Remine. So did you sell off Washington Capital Partners?
Yep. I've exited both businesses. I moved to Florida, and I was mostly spearfishing when I got a call from a friend who said, a mutual friend of a friend of mine is going to call you, pick up the phone, and it turned out to be Glenn Sanford.
Okay.
So he originally reached out and asked me if I wanted to be our chief technology officer. I said, no, thank you. I can play one on TV, but I don't like it. And then he called me back and said, I wasn't expecting a no, so let's think outside the box. And I spent some time with him, and I joined as the president of our affiliated companies. And then shortly after that, I became the chief strategy officer. And then most recently, I was named the CEO of the company.
Let's go back to Remine. I kind of understand why it's different than MLS. It's aggregating multiple MLSs, I guess. You correct me where I'm wrong. And it's also showing equity in the properties. What else does it do, and what might I be missing?
Yeah, Remine was was when I designed it, but is because it's still very much in existence after I was no longer involved. But is an MLS deployed technology, but it's a map-based data visualization tool. So at its peak, I think I had 26 different data sets that were conflated in there. So the simplest way to say it, if you picture a Google map, we drew a boundary parcel, and then we put a dot on it, and on top of that dot, we stacked as much data as we could get our hands on. So public record information, mortgage data, census data, equity, what type of deed of trust is filed on the property, consumer information from who's on title to who we think is in the property as a tenant or an occupant, their contact information. And so, most things are built out of a need. I just wanted to be able to go on a map and click or draw a polygon and say, out of these 5,000 properties, show me every property that has a lot size that exceeds the building envelope, 8,000 square feet. And then, 5,000 becomes 1,100. Then say, let me show me anyone who's been on title 10 or more years, because the probability of them willing to sell is much higher than if they just bought last year. 1,200 properties goes down to 600 properties. Show me everybody with more than $300,000 in equity. And that list that started at 5,000 could get dwindled down to 72 homes in a matter of 4 clicks. And then I can export that directly into an Excel file, where I can click one button and merge it into a mailing printing company that can create a yellow pad letter with red ink. And in literally 5 minutes, you can hyper target a very specific geography.
That's why it's called Remine. Got it.
Because it's
mining.
Real estate mining. That's exactly what the name was. And I joked that it was the cheapest unique URL I could afford. I ended up paying $5,500 to a domain broker, and it was clear enough. I'd explain what the business was and
Perfectly
afford it.
Okay. Affiliated services. That was your first position. What did that cover?
Yeah, I was in charge of all of the portfolio of companies that we have that are non-core. So our mortgage business, our joint ventures, all of our solution partners, all of the deals that eXp engages in. I helped optimize and streamline and make it simpler, make sure it's part of the workflow. So, I mean, we have products that enjoy, almost a 20% attach of every realtor in our company uses, like something like um, Utility Connect, where there's an API that makes uh, joining the company super simple. And then there's a button in the workflow based on an API we provide to them, where your consumer gets an email 2 weeks before settlement. It says, hey, congratulations on going under contract with Jim. If you'd like us to change your utilities, click this button, talk to someone in a call center. It adds value to your customer's life, right? And they can save 2 hours from sitting on the phone and trying to figure out what to buy for this, versus this company has a whole process and database team and can typically get you a better price. But the good thing is that as an agent, it makes you look good. It expands your kind of team. As a consumer, it saves you money and time. And then on the back end, there's we pay out a split on the commissions earned, because it's a brokered model for them. So, I was very interested in making sure that there was added value to the agent, the consumer, and removing friction from the process. That's kind of my obsession.
That has to do with the Utility Connect or other things?
That one specifically is Utility Connect, but that's just an example of some of the stuff that I oversaw.
Okay, and as Chief Strategy Officer, what was your position? What did they, and when I say it's probably Glenn, what did he ask you to do?
Yeah,
And
so that was an interesting call. About 6 months of being at the company, Glenn called and said, hey, I was reading about a Harvard Business Review position I was researching, and it's called Chief Strategy Officer. And the way he described it, he goes, basically, you get to be a shadow CEO. You can touch everything you want to, but not everyone technically reports to you. So you can focus on what you think needs the most time and attention. And then I can still take the brunt of being publicly facing. And I did that for 18 months. Those 18 months, there was a couple times he asked me if I was ready to be CEO. And I actually said, I'm having fun just being the fun uncle versus dad. I'd only been a founder and CEO my whole career, so I'm hyper aware of the kind of responsibility of being out front. And then came the NAR settlement. And if you recall, I got very loud and agent facing as well as industry facing. And about 2 weeks after the NAR settlement got announced, he called me and said, you are the CEO. This is no longer a debate. We're announcing it this week. And here I am.
so what comes after CEO?
Well, I've done most really cool things in the residential real estate industry. So I'm excited to have the opportunity to lead the single largest platform in the world. We're the single largest independent brokerage. Other companies that have a higher agent count are typically franchises. There's not a single independent broker with more agent count than us in the United States and in most every other country we're in. So I feel super lucky and blessed and fortunate to be in this opportunity to partner with you guys every day. But we're just getting warmed up. I feel like
Yeah,
it's
well,
early innings.
let's talk about the competition, not by name, but the people that are thinking that they can do one better than eXp. The value that eXp brings to the agents. It's not a difference of a few points on a commission or $1,000 or a few $1,000s on a cap. Why do you think eXp is so much more successful and it's expanded so
Yeah.
much faster
Yeah.
than the competition?
Great question. First off, I've attributed most of my journey to good luck and right timing, right? I think I work very hard and I'm willing to do what most aren't. But I think, when I look at my personal journey, I was in the right place at the right time with the right experience, right? So for example, when the financial crisis happened, I was old enough and experienced enough, had done enough transactions that when I saw the opportunities present itself, I had the skill set to take advantage of that moment. Same with lending because of my experience in real estate. And then in tech, It was also that right moment in the market cycle where companies were investing in SaaS growth businesses, and there was no dominant player in the space that I saw an opening. I think Glenn was way ahead of his time with virtual work. And he did the hard work for a sustained period of time. And he did not kind of take the easy, let me raise money way, which a lot of entrepreneurs did during the last decade. And Glenn is extremely smart and was at the right place at the right time and did the hard work for a sustained period of time, 7 to 8 years. And then there was a catalyst moment, which was COVID, right? Where we had this type of growth, but that type of growth had been coupled with a very important foundation. We were publicly traded. We were bootstraps, meaning that the core leadership team and the agents control the majority of the stock. So we've had our bumps and bruises and had our difficult period of scaling and fixing and adapting to all the bureaucracy from the states and the associations with being a virtual company. And we've walked the walk and talked the talk for a very long time. And what that translates to is we became a category king. And I think about this concept very specifically because when you look at a disruptive category creation moment, it's what Glenn did. And compare us Netflix to Blockbuster, Amazon to brick and mortar, or Lyft to the taxi industry. There is this moment of time where there is a lot of breakage and a pioneer goes into a category, but even included the breakage, the one thing I like to point out is this is now the new way of doing things, right? There is no startup retail company that's doing it with brick and mortar. There is no startup entertainment media business that looks more like Comcast. It looks more like Netflix, right? Netflix created a category, and the nominal dollars invested by Hulu was probably exceeding what Netflix did, but they'll never capture more than a fraction of that, right? We pay for Peacock, we pay for Paramount, we pay for all these streaming services that have a single-digit tiny percentage compared to what Netflix was able to accomplish. In mobility, Uber is the category king. I say that, somebody gets to be Lyft, and behind Lyft, there's a bunch of different ones, right? In Miami, there's specific Miami ones. California has Waymo and a couple other California specific ones. So my prediction is every new brokerage at scale will look more like us than it did to, the legacy companies like Coldwell, Century 21, KW, Remax. The reality is though that, when you invest your time into a rev share business though, and this is where I caution folks, is unlike a startup that you control, live and die by. Like, for example, if you start a real estate team, a title business, a mortgage business, a property management business, anything you're kind of in control, Jim, that rises and falls with your ability to operate. Again, for good or bad, the business rises and falls with your ability to raise money, create customer service, all that stuff. Your ability to build a rev share group, if that's the business you're interested in, you're wholly dependent on apparatus that you have no control over, meaning the customer experience from onboarding to broker support to any part of the business. You are very much dependent on the customer experience wherever to deliver. And that's just like baseline.
And which customer are we talking about? Are we talking about the brokers in the rev share, the downline?
Yeah. So if Jim, you decide to build a rev share group, your customer that you're attracting are the agents, right? You're very wholly dependent on me and the operations team to give them a good experience. Doesn't matter how good of an attractor you are and how well you can sell the value proposition. If we don't pay people on time, if we don't return their calls, if we don't give them a good experience, their probability of staying with you long term is low. And secondly, if we don't have a sustainable model, a profitable model that over time can create margin, you're going to have a really hard time being able to count on that income 3, 5, 7, 10 years from now when it really matters.
Okay, well, that has to do with sometimes the stock that's being issued.
Well,
And
not all the stock is kind of like the scorecard, but it's the underlying business model that matters, right? If you have a gross margin that creates net margin and has a sustainable business model, that's also super, super core.
right. So you talked about joint ventures. That was with I guess affiliated services. What was some of the joint ventures? Would that have been like Zoocasa or
Yeah, so we have wholly owned subsidiaries like Zoocasa, where we own I think the fifth or sixth largest internet portal in Canada. So our Canadian agents enjoy those referrals, like think of Zillow Flex or Realtor.com in the U.S. So we able to provide all those leads to eXp agents, and then we've been able to do joint ventures like Success Lending is a joint venture company owned between us and Kind Lending with Glenn Stearns, most famously known for the Undercover Billionaire TV show. And he's, a very active partner of ours in the sense he likes to speak at our events and join us on the road. But we have many affiliated relationships with software or service providers where, let's say, a product retails, a good example would be Lofty, right? Their retail product, if you're a team, is close to $540, but because we have an enterprise relationship with them and we collect the fees and make sure to pay them on time, I think you get the exact same product for about $60 a month, right? So we use our buying power on our scale to give you guys as much value as possible, right? Our size and scale, just like Costco or Walmart, who can buy stuff at a better price than if you were a small purchaser, we then pass along the savings as part of the value proposition.
like eXp Luxury has Lux VT for a fraction. The only problem I have found is that there's 4 prices for every agent, and it's just depending on whether you're on a team, not on a team, team leader, and what day of the month it is, what the price
Well,
would be.
the goal with anything is to make it better. So I'll take that as feedback and try to streamline it as much as possible.
Wasn't meant to be a complaint, but it's I'm constantly recruiting for eXp Luxury. So when people ask me what the price is, I have to give them all the prices when it should be just a singular price. Zoom versus the world. I was introduced to eXp literally. I mean, it was Glenn running the meeting. It was a Citrix GoToMeeting video meeting, and he was really proud of the fact of 2 things: the company's low overhead and eXp World. Now that Zoom has blown up, certainly the pandemic helped Zoom also. Are we finding that we're using Zoom as much or more than the world? I mean, what's your opinion of the world now
Yeah.
versus other technologies?
So first, we evolved quite a bit, right? So Verbella was the original client server download comparable to like a high functioning video game in the sense of rendering capabilities and everything else on your computer. So you needed a decently fast operating system to operate it. We've since rolled out Frame, which is an asset light version because it's browser based. So a lot less computing capability is required. And so where we use it, I mean, I used it this morning with Glenn in the world for international. What I would say that works really well is that, especially internally, that office experience, like real example, I was supposed to meet with Glenn at 9 a.m. East Coast because he's in Switzerland right now. He's going to be in Europe for almost a whole month working on international with Felix Bravo, who leads international growth. But I got there early, and I was having mic problems earlier because I bought a new mic. So I logged into Frame early on purpose. And I actually saw who was in that frame, and I was able to pop into Felix's office, Felix Bravo, who's our VP of international growth, and just have like a unprompted, unscheduled 8-minute catch up. I asked him what city he was in. I know where he's at because he ultimately reports to me up the channel. But it was a really nice unstructured 8-minute catch up call, and it felt no different than if we were in a physical headquarters. And I had a meeting in the conference room, and I was just hanging outside the conference room waiting for all the other people, and I just saw Felix was in his office, and I walked in and just had a nice little chat with him. So there's something very real and tangible of kind of the serendipitous, unstructured part of being in an experience that feels a lot like an office. Again,
That's interesting. That's interesting that you're describing it that way. So I never really imagined it as something anything other than I'm going to a meeting or I'm going to see an individual. But you're saying this is really almost like it's like a town square, and you go to different different storefronts.
Glenn describes it that way. And interestingly enough, I'm not sure if you've played with Frame. We actually have a webcam function. So when I walked into the meeting with Glenn, we both turned on our face camera. We could see each other inside of World, right? So it's kind of the best of both worlds. I find myself externally exclusively using Zoom or Google Meets, whichever product people prefer. But there is a very collaborative functionality, and I do most of my internal meetings on Frame.
Okay, well, that's I'll have to spend some time in the metaverse then and get a feel for it. So it's almost like it's a good way to catch up and network.
Yeah, and sometimes I just gotta put on my shoes and throw on my AirPods and have a couple conversations just walking, just so I could move my physical body and get a change of scenery.
Because I noticed I would go into, just exploring. I mean, I haven't done this in a while, but I'd go into like the big arena where I guess you could have every shareholder potentially for a quarterly meeting or something.
That's when it's uncomparable, right? In a positive way, right? So our all hand meetings can almost hit 2,000 people. And outside of our technology, I don't know of another collaborative technology that allows for it, right? Zoom or Google Meet. Nobody supports that. Like the only other thing you can do is stream a YouTube and just have Q&A. But just the level of collaboration, the interaction, and I have addressed groups of 2,000 people for us internally. And it's as close as possible to replicating the energy and feeling that you get from an in-person event.
So it's interesting. So one of the things I was looking for as my previous personal company that I headed up was growing, I wanted to perhaps buy the Virbela product, and they were ready to sell it to me. And then the final question is, are you in the real estate business? After it was clear that I was in the real estate business from the first conversation, but they said, oh, sorry, it's only for eXp. So are there competing platforms, technologies being sold to eXp's competitors that they are using at the same level that the company is using?
I'm not that I'm aware of. Jim, there could be one, but not that I'm aware of. It's super interesting because I'm the CEO of a public company, and there's a lot of conversation right now of forcing people back to work and the in-office dynamic, where I think our experience and tool set is completely different, is the sense that, a different way of saying is we were born in the cloud, right? Like we did not go through a forced moment where we had to kind of pivot into it. This is our DNA at our core. And I truly feel like whether it's that kind of town square, as you described it, where I can have an impromptu meeting, if I have an opening on my calendar, anyone on my team can grab it. Workplace has a built-in video chat system, and it's not rude or inappropriate for me to video message somebody randomly, right? Like the expectation is that you're at your desk working, and whether that's call, text, workplace, World, Zoom, whatever form of communication, this level of kind of open door policy is what I feel and experience across the enterprise. So when I read about companies saying like, one of the best examples that I think is the ability to attract talent, right? So Glenn's in Bellingham, Washington most of the time. Wendy is our CMO, or Chief Marketing Officer. She's in Southern California half the year, and the other half she's in Phoenix, Arizona. Patrick O'Neill, our COO, and Sumant, our CTO, are both in Dallas. One recruited the other from their previous employer. That's why they happen to be in the same city. Brian Ellington, our Chief Learning Officer, is in Austin. Kyle Kittleson, our EVP of Corporate Development that I work very closely with, is in New England. I'm in Miami. Like, we almost have an entire distributed, Amy Weaver's in Charlotte, North Carolina, Nadia's in Toronto. Our entire leadership team is, scattered around North America. And I think that gives us such a huge advantage in enabling to recruit talent. Like, I'm telling you, there is absolutely nothing Glenn Sanford could have offered me 2 years ago to get me to move out of Miami, right? There was no monetary amount of money, because this place is perfect for me from a lifestyle, culture, family standpoint. And I think by not having this flexibility, I think the very loud headline on Friday was that Amazon's requiring 5-day work weeks. And I just think companies I think the genie's out of the bottle. I think COVID did a couple things for us as a society. One, it was a very visceral, real conversation about mortality, right? Like, however long the fear lasted, but there was a moment there where we thought we could die at any moment, right? It was scary for a couple of weeks. It turned out not to be that big of a deal, but there was a moment where I think everyone probably had a very honest conversation with themselves about what's important, what they want to experience. And I think what that experience changed for everybody is, where do we live really changed, right? So I grew up in the DC area. We moved prior to COVID, but like DC, New York, San Francisco, Chicago, we're all these traditional, if you want to go to tech, if you want to go to government, you go to DC. If you want to go to finance, you go to New York. Versus now it's like, hey, what's my most, I love the heat, and I love the ocean, and I love Latin culture. Miami checks all the personal boxes for me in a way that no other city in America does. And with this ability to have distributed talent, I think it makes companies who have a virtual platform like ours substantially more competitive, right? Because, any opportunity that would make me disrupt my life. And again, I made breakfast for my little ones today and dropped them off at school. And I'll take my daughter to her singing practice and my son to his jiu-jitsu practice this afternoon, where even if I had to commute inside of Miami, right? I'm not talking about living in a different city. If I just had to go to Brickell, the city center where the financial kind of high rises are and most of the headquarters are, I'd be losing 30 to 45 minutes each way. And those 30 to 45 minutes are actually super critical in my quality of life, because those are the moments I spend with my little ones that no amount of money or opportunity is interesting enough for me to not choose a platform and opportunity that gives me that flexibility.
So you brought up, the old traditional way of doing real estate, and some of the competition has sold franchises. I wrote a book about it years ago, Your $1 Million Year in Real Estate, where I really specifically took aim at franchising in general, even though I was once a franchisor, then I was a franchisee. I did a number of things. So I sort of had a perspective many people wouldn't have had. And I sort of think that the franchises have painted themselves into a corner when a disruptor like eXp comes on the scene. Here they have basically fragmented their company and saddled their most important people with huge overheads that they now have to maintain to stay in business, maybe not even make a profit. Against a company like eXp, I didn't understand it then, but Glenn was bragging about the low overhead that he had. What I think he should have said is the low overhead you would have if you took on my mindset. But that's another story. That's why I didn't join, because the focus was on the tech and other things, then Jim, you can come here and you can blow up your dream and your brand on our platform. We've done the heavy lifting. We're in the capital markets, we're public, and we do all these things. So what's your perspective about the future of the business in general? You know, our
Yeah, no,
competition, where are they going to be?
You laid it out how I explained the value proposition. So the first thing I say is that we're a platform that allows real estate entrepreneurs to build whatever size dream they want. And you know, that's a very specific sentence I've put together based on what it means to different people. I'm hyper aware that, you know, 68% of our people sell 5 to 10 homes a year. And that's, you know, whether that's their limit or what they're looking for, I need to make sure that our platform supports those people in a world-class way, while also having the backbone and infrastructure to support the top 250 teams that collectively last year sold more than 69,000 homes, right? And I'm also aware that 14% of our company have 3 or more people in the rev share group, meaning that a whole lot of people come here and don't attract a single person. They just come here to sell homes, right? So you described it very well in the sense that I think the franchise relationship and the franchisor relationship is actually adversarial, in the sense that the franchisor gets paid off revenue share, funny enough, through a royalty. And then the franchisees left over to hopefully make ends meet with a very expensive, antiquated business model. I explain our rev share system as an asset-light franchising model, where instead of being adversarial and kind of full of friction, we've created a aligned model where we're truly partners. 50 cents comes in, a dollar comes in, 50 cents goes into the rev share pool, 50 cents goes into the gross margin pool for me to run the business with. And I've been at other companies, and the level of ownership that you guys experience, you know, legally through ownership of stock, but more importantly, how you think about ownership and like how you truly see yourselves as partners, is pretty special and unique. What I say to everybody right now is, you know, if you're choosing RevShare, just make sure you're going somewhere that's proven and sustainable. Because unlike other startup businesses, you know, you could do everything perfectly, Jim, but if the company you're partnering with isn't sustainable and isn't going to be here 5 or 10 years, and you know, access to public markets, you know, is promising to go public at a later date with an untested model, you know, it's just
Yes,
it's
I
real, right?
agree. I've heard those promises. Oh yes, we're going public in 2 years. So I just noticed, and I saw it on the eXp Workplace, eXp Life, or whichever social media I was looking at, and not to mention them, but they're part of sort of a network, and it looks to me like eXp is doing a white label version of themselves. Nowhere could I find the eXp logo or brokered by eXp anywhere except the article. Like I went to their website, couldn't find anything about eXp at all. Yet it appears, based on what I read in eXp Life, that they're operating on the eXp platform.
Yeah,
So is
no,
that
so
something I missed?
we quietly mentioned it because it's in beta, in the sense that we haven't rolled it out at scale. But look, one of the things about being an entrepreneurial, even though we're a scaled enterprise, and one of the things that Glenn really wanted in me is I'm a full-blooded entrepreneur. I've never done anything other than run businesses, is that you always need to be testing and going out to market with different products and ideas. We have a handful of white label operations on top of our platform. It doesn't apply in all 50 states. I was just on the phone with someone earlier today who I wanted to do it for, but their state won't allow it. So I think there's 18 states that won't allow it. Funny enough, California very well allows it, which is not normally how most of my sentences start when I talk about what I'm allowed to do in certain states and not in certain states. Like, for example, Ohio and Colorado won't allow it one bit. So it depends on the state. You know, we haven't advertised it very loudly because there's got to be a good use case for it. So the one you're referencing was a former Sotheby's affiliate and then has a Forbes affiliation. So adding a fourth logo would make it almost look like a law firm. So there was a very interesting use case, if you will. But
But they're not going to be able to expand into, let's say, Colorado, for example, because of
correct,
that,
correct. So
without then adding,
powered by, brokered
yeah,
by. Yep.
right.
So yeah, like Florida's difficult, but not impossible. Arizona's possible. California's possible, but like states like Ohio and Colorado, because I literally just looked into it, it's a non-starter.
Are
So
you the person I would speak to about it for my company, or is there somebody else?
absolutely, just message
Okay,
me on Workplace when
okay.
we hang up. And again, for anybody watching or listening who's open to this, look, our goal is to support and build and again, my statement of we're a platform to allow you guys to build. I will always be open. And again, I reserve the right to change my mind once I have information to start or stop something. But this was one of our compelling things. We actually did it before even our competitors announced they were doing it. But I think there needs to be a significant use case for it. And for folks who, you know, may think they want it, we've had conversations where they did the due diligence and saw the rebranding costs and then having to support that. And even from a liability standpoint, if you're representing your independent, you could attract the type of attention from litigation that you don't want.
Oh, okay, let's go right there. NAR settlement. So you were almost like stepping up to the, in my mind, the position that the NAR president probably should have been doing. I think they completely botched that entire defense. It was ridiculous. It was such an easy take the jury basically to school about what we do every day and why we're worth far more than anybody is either paying or not paying us. But that's another story for another time. You were on CNBC, you were being quoted in CNN. I mean, CNN would have an article, for example, and you would be, the face of the article and half the article. And then there would be a couple little quotes from real estate agents around the country. This was before you were the CEO, or it was all about the same time?
Yeah, no, the NAR settlement was the catalyst that got me into the seat. So as I said, you know, Glenn and I had discussions in previous years, and I told him this works great. I liked being in the background. But when it happened, there was a lot of like that weekend, right? It happened on a Friday. Well, that weekend, I was on the phone with Glenn and our general counsel. Glenn, to his credit, said, you know, you got to get really loud. I'm well versed in it. I understand it. And I got really loud, not only for our agents, but then industry and also consumer facing. And within 2 weeks of my loudness came the call from Glenn that I was the CEO. It was no longer up for debate. And so, you know, I feel like this moment was one of those moments where it's not as much of a choice. It's like, this is what needs to happen because that's what our agents need from support from us. And it was interesting because you're right. I've probably been mentioned in media, external media, not even industry trades like 71 times in the last 45 days. I just saw a report of it on Friday, where, you know, there was a lot of fear and uncertainty from other leaders who just didn't want to create additional liability. And we made the business decision of saying it's probably more important for us to be in front of our agents and feeling that, hey, who the people driving the ship actually understand what's going on and have a plan and have opinions on that plan, right? And it was clear to us that we weren't going to leave our future in the hands of a committee to kind of decide for us. And so, you know, in January, I didn't think I'd be in the forums business or doing, like, I did 4 media interviews last week. And I never would have thought that that was part of my weekly schedule. But the interesting thing is we've now moved on from answering NAR questions to actually, you know, having opinions on Fed rate and being thought leaders that media, and when I mean media, consumer facing media, we now opine on, which, by the way, we should have had an opinion. We're the single largest brokerage from an agent count standpoint, a transaction count standpoint. So I think our opinion matters more than some of our other competitors who get the microphone a lot more.
So being as large as eXp is, do you feel like the consumers know who we are? I mean,
I would, yeah, I would say 6 months ago, it was finite, the amount of people that do and have. All I'm saying is anecdotally in the last probably 2 months, the amount of text messages, workplace chats, feedback I've received has been really encouraging. But I've got messages from agents who said, I just left a listing appointment and my seller knew our company name and knew your name from as loud as you've been on the media side. So I know that's a game changer in for many consumers or our agents who are consumer facing, which is really cool. So, this is just the beginning. I'm not giving up the microphone now that I've found a way to have a platform for all of us. This is not at all about my opinions. It's more of making sure that we're in the conversation and we continue to have a seat at the table when it comes to thought leadership.
So what are the advantages to realtors in general and eXp agents specifically with this NAR settlement, if any?
Yes. So first of all, I'm super clear that I agree with you. I think it was botched. I think that the attorneys pursuing this don't care about consumers' interest. I think they were just trying to see a massive payday. And I think it's pretty clear because the settlement is confusing, right? So let's move on from the fact that I disagree and it shouldn't have happened, but here we are. I was just quoted in a Riz Media. If you go to Riz Media right now, I'm the cover article on it, and I have lots of opinions, and they actually quoted me quite a bit on it. My quote that closes the article says, Leo says 10% is life, what happens, and 90% how you decide to react to it. So given that this is a new rule set, I think the advantages that come from it are the fact that a conversation about compensation is now forced, right? And I think every agent is now a listing agent. And what I mean by that is that you now have to show up to a presentation expecting it to be competitive. You have to have a tight, clear value proposition you can articulate. You disclose what prices you're willing to charge for the services you're willing to do. And they are doing, I think it's forcing conversations that so said differently, you're now not going to lose to that kind of second cousin nephew who just passed his test 2 weeks ago, because you have to actually articulate what you're going to charge for your services through value. And that brand new licensed person who probably had no business representing those people isn't going to have the skills to be able to compete with that. And again, I'm not saying that people shouldn't have a chance into the business, but I think everyone now needs to put their best foot forward and actually present a strong value proposition and be able to defend it and articulate it. And so, if I had to find some silver lining, because again, I'm not very happy with the way the settlement went. But feelings aside and just being pragmatic, I think this is going to level people up and it's going to become a confidence-based, skills-based, competitive landscape added to the buy side that didn't exist because the previous kind of format didn't have the same framework. And just be aware that you now have different groups of consumers you did not have on the buy side. So what I mean by that is on the seller side, every year you've been licensed, Jim, you've had to contend with the sellers having the option to go for sale by owner, right? That was always on the table for sellers. Sellers always had the option to go with a flat fee, kind of low fee, low service broker option. You've always had the ability to compete with brokers who charge a percentage base different than yours, right? But on the buy side, structurally, there was like, it is what it is, and what's offered on co-op is what you get. We're now in a world where a percentage of buyers, I refer to them as FSBO buyers, for the unrepresented buyers. There's going to be a percentage of buyers who say, I don't want anyone to represent me and no one's representing me. That was not a bucket of buyers we contended with. It is now. There will be flat fee, low service, kind kind of a la carte brokers that pop up. We've had them the 2 decades I've been licensed with on the seller side the entire time. So they're just new on the buy side.
So are you suggesting there's going to be a new business model developing out of this
100%.
for
I
buyer
mean,
brokers?
100%. We've already seen the headlines. Again, I don't get scared or worried
What are
because
their business models?
yeah, they'll
These
do it
new
for a
brokers.
flat fee, just like, they'll
Okay.
open the door for X, write the
Oh,
contract,
okay.
Y,
Yeah.
which again exist on the seller side and have for decades. I think at the end of the day, consumers will pick agents at a high disproportionate rate, meaning 80 or 90%, because it's very hard. It's a full-time job, right? And I think at the end of the day that when you do something that's infrequent, expensive, and confusing, you're going to want your hand held by an expert.
Do you think this bell can be unrung? In other words, do you think people, I mean, is there a lawsuit? Is NAR being sued? I mean, is
Yeah,
there?
this is, I'll just tell you how I approach it. I work with the information in front of me. Right now, I need to operationalize the change and support it as much as possible. If the bell were to be unrung, that's pretty easy. If the bell doesn't get unrung, then we deal with the new normal and we create the best tools to support you guys to give consumers the best possible experience. And that's how I spend my waking hours prioritizing what I do.
Let's talk about eXp International for just a minute. Hong Kong is open, yes?
Hong Kong is not open yet.
Okay.
We've had a lot of interest there, and I just a friendly reminder, I do have a hard stop in a couple minutes.
Okay.
International to me is probably one of the most exciting growth engines for our company. Why I get excited about international is there's like 5 million agents, that we've identified across very robust markets. So one of the interesting things, because people call me all the time, be like, hey, what about the Grand Caymans or something like that, or even like Belize? We always look for total agent count as well as total transaction count, right? So just even though there's great price points and a very kind of attractive destination globally, it might still not be big enough for us to run our business model there.
No, I've just seen like Japan, for example. I've seen that in some of the lists, and I don't think Japan is actually open yet.
Japan is not open yet.
Yep.
Japan is a phenomenally interesting country that I know a lot about, from a population count standpoint, from a transaction standpoint. But where I get excited is I think we're going to be able to bring what we've learned in 15 years in the US and Canada and really have that scale in a really cool way, because it's kind of like, if you only knew what you know now question that, we give to people. So we have kind of best practices that have worked. And I think what works really well, taking any business international, if you look at successful US businesses that go into other countries, is to actually localize them as much as possible, right? So, the kind of cliche example is like when you go to McDonald's in France, there are menu items that don't exist in the US, or Japan or Latin America
Shrimp in Italy.
that resonate really well with that local consumer. So, whether it's adjusting caps and splits and fees because there's portals to pay for that we don't have to pay for in the US or Canada. There's just localization and kind of adapting to the way things are done there. Like, for example, a lot of countries don't have licensing laws. So, in the UK, you can't join eXp UK unless you have 2 years of full-time experience. And have a active license in good standing, you can join us. Versus, the UK and other parts of continental Europe, you can't join us unless you have 2 years of full-time experience, only because we have no other measure of measuring professionalism.
I just added 2 agents to my team from Spain, and they don't need licenses in the towns that they're in. Very interesting. So I know we're short for time. I just wanted to ask you about your Pareja Family Foundation with your wife, Ariana. Anything you want to say about that?
So we met super young in life, and we both actually were mentors with Big Brothers Big Sisters. And that was a super interesting way of learning that you're never ready. People always think of charity or giving as, hey, when I have more time or more money. And what I say is, look, whatever hand you're dealt in life and you have right now is the super strength. So we have a theory of giving in a concentrated manner. So we start our family foundation and we take women and folks of color who haven't had an opportunity to get into tech, and we subsidize a scholarship program for upskilling boot camp with tech. And we've successfully managed to take people making $35,000 to $45,000 a year and get them in the 80s, 90s, and breaking six figures in income without saddling them with college debt. So kind of our thesis has always been, you don't need to try to change the world all at once, because I feel like that's how people get overwhelmed and don't start. Just pick one person. And again, I believe this theory works for just about anybody. Like there's something you know how to do, Jim, that if you just gave one person enough time, whether that's a young person through mentorship or some form of giving of your time and what's in between your two ears, you could significantly change the course of somebody's life.
And what question should I have asked? What did I forget to ask you?
You asked me a whole lot of stuff. I'm just excited for the future. I think there's a lot of change coming to the industry. And not opining on if it should have or shouldn't have happened, but it's here. And I think we're going to continue seeing a transformation from analog to digital, whether that's brick and mortar to virtual to, the agents who use AI and harness the power of emergent technologies will always put the ones that don't out of business. So I'm excited for what's to come. I think our industry is not going anywhere. I think, consumers want their hand held by an expert and are willing to pay a reasonable fee for that experience.
I have sort of a question slash thought to end. So I have a eXp commercial agent that's probably, he was with eXp Realty, moved to eXp commercial recently, wants to join my team, is being forced to leave eXp commercial to go back to Realty to join my team. And I'm just wondering, is there any way to do some kind of less of a division and more of a merge?
So the simple answer is, like, they're two separate entities brokered by different entities. So for us to support the team, they have to be on the correct entity, just from who's even licensed to support that person. If it were to come up often, and again, I don't think any system's perfect. I think part of leadership is always being open to feedback, and then being able to transparently tell you, hey, that's a good idea. This is why we're going to do it. Or, hey, as good of an idea it is, maybe it doesn't scale. Maybe we can't support it legally. Maybe, like for your white label example, I literally talked to a mega team at a competitor who would come here tomorrow if I could give him a white label, and Holly just said there's just no legal way to do it in Ohio. Ohio's just not okay with it. There's nothing to do or get around on that one. But Jim, it was an absolute pleasure. I want to make sure I'm on time to my next one.
I thank you for giving us your time. This is Jim Lowenstern. This is the eXponential Files. And I want to thank Leo Pareja, CEO of eXp Realty, for being here. And we'll see you next time.
Take care.